1, 2, 3, go. All right. Good morning. Thank you for joining, Heather. And this webinar is about reports and things in SAM that you need to know to make the reports work really well for you. So our agenda today is to talk about the report's purpose. We're going to talk about some filters and different things that sort of can be confusing for folks to try and clear some of that up. And then report stats and the value of using those and having them on your reports. So we'll start with the report's purpose. And that really is, it seems kind of simple, like we know we want to build this report about, but being just really clear and having a main purpose of the report, because you could always build additional reports, is helpful in order to help you figure out how to build that report. I think also having too many concepts or purposes to your report makes the report really wide, really lengthy, and sort of no longer becomes user friendly, and it might actually have too many multi-records on there. So just kind of thinking about what is the purpose of the report and narrowing it down so that your audience can extract the information that they need from that report. But when you're building the report, it's going to be really important to know your tables and where the data is located. And knowing that is going to help you figure out why things might be empty. That might allow you to change some processes in it. So ways to explore what the tables are and where fields align. We're going to start first from a form. And we're doing that because we're starting from a form because most of your users are going to interact with forms. They're not often almost never are going to be on a table or like in the settings and in the tables trying to find reports from there. Like they can't even see that stuff. So their day-to-day functioning is happening from a report. So I want to show you on a report on a form, how you can figure out the tables that are on here. After a while, as a full admin or SAM lead, you will just kind of know where these things exist. But under advanced options and form customizer, there is an option here to allow you to see the table titles. And I've chosen this form because it's cover page, and I think general users are going to often see the fields on the first screen that they access when they're looking at a client record. But this will do this on any form in SAM. And you can see that the table title is put before the field title. So here we know that the child table is used, the child case table, and then we've got some placement data. And that's it that's on this particular form. But it's really easy if they're like, well, we're talking about this placement data, we're talking about the ongoing social worker, whatever it is that they want on a report, it's an easy way for you to find that table information. Another thing that's really easy or useful for SAM leads is knowing how to access the field properties screen. And there's several different ways to actually access that. I'm going to talk about it from a form. When I get to reports and actually looking at a report, I will show you it from there as well. And let me see this. So we're already on the form customizer. I could click on the field and get to the field properties screen. And so here it's just verifying again that it's on the table. That's my purpose here in this call. So there's a ton of information about field properties, but our focus is on where is that field so that you can build your report. From a screen that a user is interacting with, you can also click on the field, and then you'll have this little link here I think actually this also highlights, and you can click there and it'll take you to the field property screen. So either of those two links will allow you to get to this field property screen and you'll know the table. But just in this other part, you can see that what type of field it is, what kind of list it's using, and these things are clickable where you can find out the values in that list, things like that. There's a ton of information on the field property screen, and we at InReach Solutions use it all the time to help administer agency sites. So it's a great resource for you. Let's see. Field properties. Oh, and then there is a tables and fields report. So I have this in my back pocket. I don't go to it all the time. A lot of times the field properties screen will give me what I need, but sometimes I'm looking, somebody will tell me kind of a random field name and they don't give me enough information of where they're seeing it, things like that, and I can find it. Two places that it might exist under settings, tables and fields. I think this works on most agency sites, and there are a few that it doesn't, and I don't know why, but there's this link called fields reports. When I click on it, it takes us to the tables and fields. So it tells us, table ID and title. There's a host of different columns that can be added if we need more information, but by default, you should have something kind of similar to this. The field ID, the field title. So often I'm going to know some bit of information based on what that user is telling us about the field title. That tends to be what they're talking about. And then click on the column, search by the field, and use something like contains and say, let's say status. And here we've got 60 fields on 37 tables that use the term status. So I can kind of narrow down what it is that I'm talking about. Maybe I know for certain that we're talking about the case, and here's the case status field. Okay, so it can help align us specifically. Oops. Okay, so the other kind of thing that we see with reports happening and keeping into that the topic of our purpose is having multiple multi-record tables on the report. So multi-record table is a table where you're tracking history or multiple records. So people that live in your home, home studies, references, training courses, progress reports, placements, like most of the tables that you will interact with are multi-record tables. And when you have multiple of these types of tables on one report, SAM is going to duplicate that information. It's when the tables are not related to each other, when they have no direct relationship. I'm going to show you an example of that here. So here is an example where in the table structure of SAM, home studies and background checks do not directly correlate to each other. And what I mean by that is that the home study record is not the parents of background checks. They are separated. They're separated because every state does things differently. Every agency has different requirements. So separating them for us has been the best situation for us. But so let me say that may vary in your site, but oftentimes we're kind of keeping these things separate, and then I'll give you the best practice that we've talked about in the last couple case management webinars. But here you can see this family has two home studies, original home study and the updated home study, and all of these different background checks here, and they are literally duplicated here because there is no direct relationship. So you might choose to have a report where we're showing the current home study table, right? So we're only would see the updated home study and all of the background checks. or some subset of background checks, because I do think in best practice, you should have a status on your background check to say that all the clearances are done, or it rolled up to some home study record. You could also decide that you wanted to move background checks up under the home study, and that may actually already exist, but there are some limitations that that hierarchy strategy creates. So this is a good example of like why not to do it. And if your reports look like this, where there's duplicated data, you this is why, right? Is just there's just too many multi-record tables, and so narrowing your the purpose of your report will be important for you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about filters. And filters, well, I think with filters, we're going to talk specifically about a few things, as there's, I mean, literally almost infinite number of things you could do. I'm sure there's a number, but because our systems are customizable, it sort of can be unlimited because we don't know what fields you're going to create and things like that. So we're going to talk specifically about using the filter of must be in results and why you would choose that versus not. We'll talk about some of the time-based dynamic filters and show you a guide also that we've built that gives some visual to it. And this is going to be a guide that's work in progress for a while because there's just a lot of filters. And then we'll talk about all entered for and all empty for and like what that means. And then we'll talk about filter groups and why you would use those. Oops, wait, I'm going to take a step back. Actually, I'm going to go to this must be in results first. So this is a report about foster care placements, and it says all. So one thing to know, I mean, this report webinar is not on the basics of reports, but we do have a really good webinar for that kind of explains everything. But the title of your report or the report name can be anything that you want. So it doesn't have to even correlate to what we're actually seeing. When I build a report, I will do that because I just, I think it is helpful, but it doesn't, it doesn't translate nicely to regular users, and your team may have a report that's called, I don't know. I mean, it could be anything, right? Where your team is using a name that you've created that just doesn't actually translate perfectly to the tables that are in the system. So I guess what I'm saying is the report name doesn't mean anything about this report at all. Okay, it really is just whatever you want to call it. What does matter is how the report is configured. And so you can find that under options and the report configuration. So this is showing us a report from the child under the child case placements. And we do have this filter. This is one of the first filters that you can put on a report that the results is saying there must be at least one placement record for any child on this report to be showing. So if there are children in the site that do not have placements, those client records are not going to be on this report. Okay, it really is that simple, but this can be, I think, sometimes a stickler with, and probably because it's a little bit, it's like outside of the filters, right? When we're looking at all the filters there could be, this is outside of that, but this is a filter that's limiting all the other, or excluding rather, all of the other child records that don't have placements, to showing just those that do. Right. So in a sense, my report titling makes sense because this is for all kids that have placements, and in our system, placement records are going to tend to be created for foster care. When you are, let's say, if you, I want to show one other thing. If you wanted to edit this and show all children, and let me actually open this one more time. So we've got 48 kids, right, that have nearly 80 placements. And that's because some kids have more placements, right? They have more than one placement, like this youth here, right? They've got 2 active and a discharge, because this isn't even showing us any additional filters. Like, I'm just looking at active placements. This is literally just all placement records that have existed. When we're on the report, I could change that by clicking the edit, and I could unclick this, press save, just to kind of show you what the difference is. Now we've got 207 children. We still only have 79 placements because that's the number of placements that exist in the site. Okay, so it's a really big difference, and little tweaks to your filters will make a difference. So one of the things that I think as a SAM lead, you will need, and you will grow to understand your data and what you're looking at and what you can expect, but having other folks check it over too, of like, do we have all the records that we're supposed to? Because you might want to fiddle with your filters. Okay. When you are building a report, you will start from the table structure. Which tables are we putting on? And at that point in time, you're asked, it literally looks exactly like this, where which of these tables must we have in the results? Okay. That's it for this. Actually, no, I want to stay on this, don't I? Yes. Okay. All right. So now we'll talk about some of the time-based dynamic filters. That's going to be on date fields, which majority of what you guys collect are dates. It's very chronological sort of data tracking that happens in this sector. We can click on the column and search by that particular field. Is a nice quick way, instead of going to the search and then having to select the table on the field. I think this is a little funny. It's not like, so I'm literally doing it. I've just noticed this yesterday in playing with this, but so I don't know if it would have held the table if I had not changed it. Okay, so some of the ones that we want to talk about are, well, specific quarter, right? In current and specific, I think these things are clear that you're setting very specific time periods. If you set a specific year, this will not become a dynamic report. It'll always be that year. Versus like in a current year or in a current quarter, this is going to transition as time passes. Okay, so in the current year, if we had a report set up like that, now January 1st, we're going to have a completely different report. Okay, and things will be added to that report, right? So it's not a narrow time period necessarily. If new placement records get added throughout the year, that report is going to grow. So just want to be really clear on what that's like. These I think are the most sort of confusing, of like, what is SAM asking? Within the past and including the future, this is going to give us data that is like 2 months in the past, but not 3 months in the past. And then anything else has a future date. So that could be really good for due dates or expiration dates. right? Or things that are not completed. And seeing what's up and coming too. Sometimes it might be too far in the future. Like you don't actually care about future dates because you're trying to clean up historical records. So I know we have like some QA folks on the call. This might be a good one for you for some things. I want to look at completed dates or due dates where there is no completed date, but I'm looking at due dates that are in the past to make sure that our records are kept up. That I don't really care about due dates in the future because that's up and coming. I'm looking at historical records to get them all in order. So we're not anything after today's date, we're not looking at. This is going to be the opposite. Instead of going backwards in time, we're going forward, but we might want to include the past, and that would be good for due dates, right? Looking for things that are up and coming in the next month, and if it's overdue, I want to know that. That's including the past. Excluding the past is I'm only future facing. Over in the past is like, it's not within that 2-month period. I'm looking 3, 4, 5, 6 months in the past or whatever years or whatever. I'm looking way back. I'm not within my, whatever I decide. And I don't really know a good example for this one. I think it's just here. I don't know if I ever use this one. Oh, good one, Ryan. Thank you. I'm so glad you're on. Yeah, ages is a good one. I'm looking for birth dates that are over 5 years ago or yeah, it's like, yes, over 5 years ago. Yeah, that makes sense. Right? So age is a great one. Over in the future, I think is going to be due dates things again, if you're, or expiration dates, if you like using expiration dates. I like to use the equals a lot. I think it's more clear. So if you have auto actions or you're looking at a report every day and you want to make sure something has happened, equals I don't know how often we use the week, but the day, the month, the year, things very specifically in the past or in the future on a specific date. And then annual date and time is going to be with anniversaries and birthdays, right? Employment start dates, things like that. And then for that, let me share with you this great guide that Ryan put together. It's got visuals to that time frame. So the orange is our possible valid value. The green is a value we might be comparing against. And anything with the blue dot over is the options that Sam would give you. Right? It's like the records that Sam's going to offer for you. So this is like very exact. This is like not this, but it could be these other values. And so he's got them created not on text operators, but on things with numbers and dates so that you can, if there's a written and visual to it. So find what helps. If you're kind of uncertain, this might help specify that a bit more. This is under, does it tell us? Tables and fields. Okay. Tables and fields, so you can find that later. You could also just click on or search by filters and you'll find guides that have filters in it and different ways of using that. Well, that's funny. Oh, okay. That's where it shows up. That was our placements all. Let me see. Let me double check here. Okay, so here, a couple of other things we're going to talk about. I do want to hit this all entered for and all empty for. And I don't know that we have a report, but actually I will go back a bit. It's this report, and I can use that to show, because our example is on background checks. Okay, so I'm going to look at this check expiration date. And let me actually use that. I think this will work. So where we don't have any expiration dates, that's what I was looking for here. These are records where all of the background check records that happen to be on these couple of these families here, none of them have expiration dates. If I add an expiration date, I do believe if I were to refresh that screen, that's the Frank family. That Frank family, all their records go away. So it can be helpful for like training, where all of the training records are complete, or all of the background records are complete. I think those fields, like the background check completed date, may not even exist here. And the expiration date's kind of a funny one, but you can see that it did take away all of them. Where if I were pulling it on, what was the other? All entered for an entity, we may not even have any records at all, right? If I went and did all the records here, put in dates for these guys, let's stick this date in here and try that again. All entered for an entity. Ah, maybe I didn't do it all. Is there more here? All of them? Yes, it actually is all of these here. Right. Sorry, I got the wrong family that had way too many here. But since I'm on it, really close. Okay. Now let's try that again. Search by the field, all entered for an entity. And here is that one family record. And again, this is, of course, the report where it's duplicated. And we did this on purpose to show you this report. But now all of these records are here. So this is good also for like your QA is like making sure we've got all the families where everything's entered. Where everything's not entered, that's not going to be helpful. I would use instead like filter out entered values. Now I can see what is blank still. And we use that all the time, right? There's lots of gaps in this particular report, but I'm focused on that expiration date, and we're obviously, our team's not getting that data in. And so that could lead to process changes or required fields or all kinds of things that we might want to do. And you can certainly bulk update the report also. Okay. So now let's talk about filter groups. And we're going to show two different ones. But Ryan, I think we've got the wrong report linked here. So I'm going to go to this one that we actually just did. As a second example. And Ryan, if you can find me the placements in the last year, that'd be cool, so that we just have a second one. But it may or may not be this. What? But this doesn't have filter groups in it. Oh, why, thank you. Okay. Okay, so filter groups allow us to say this group of filters must exist and this other group of filters must exist. Or it could be this group of filters must exist or this other group of filters must exist, right? And you can have multiple, more than two, but just for my me to be able to articulate it, I'm only going to give two examples, or I'm sorry, filter A and filter B. So this is saying we are looking at all children that were placed last year in 2021. That is our goal. So we can't just do placement start date equals 2021, because there might have been kids that were placed in 2018 that are still in care in 2021, right? So that one filter would exclude those kids. So here we've got, and nor could we do where they were discharged, right? So it's like, we have to find out what's the right mix to put in. So we've got like placement start date is before 2022. So we're saying anybody who's started in the past, and their placement end date is empty, or they discharged in 2021. So they're either still an active placement or they were discharged in last year. Or if they were discharged last year and they may have started last year or they started a different year, but this part is getting us the kids that were started last year and ended last year. Right, but it really is opening it up. It's also getting the kids that were placement start date here. So when we look at our start dates, we'll sort of ascending. We've got a kid who's still active, but they were placed quite a long time ago. If I sort it descending, got kid that was placed in 2021, but they were placed in that time period, but they have been discharged at that point. Or within recently, but they were in care during 2021. This kid is still, right? This is an example where the kid was placed and discharged in the same year. And so we've captured them. It's going to be important when you are building your filters to go through and verify your records. If you think and this is where, as a SAM lead, you need to have internal partners, program directors, or other staff that you're working with to ensure, because they're going to have a more intimate knowledge of who they're working with, that you are capturing everybody in here. Okay, this is another one where we were talking this morning. What am I showing you on here? Let's look first at our configuration. So again, we have a filter group. This is, we wanted to show all foster families that are active, that are ready to have placements, and those that have active placements. So we don't want to see discharged placement records on here. We're just wanting to see families that are active and their active placements. So one is, here's the filter group strategy that we've got here, showing these kids where the family is active, but the placements, we're not showing discharge placements, right? And we've got some that they also have open capacity. So that could be limiting. Like this, we probably want to move that off if we also want to see all families that even if they have no capacity, right? They might be at full capacity for their home, but they have active placements. That is going to limit us and take those families away from the report. And this one here is going to show us the placements are active and the family's status is active. Brian, what's the difference here? I guess these two, yeah, there's no difference here, but we got what we wanted. Why? Because we're showing all placements. Yeah, there's no difference there. So then do you have to have that? So what's kind of fun-ish for reports, right? It depends on your ideals of fun, is if we fiddle with this, like I would think one that doesn't need to be here, and this then sort of looks the same to where is there even a necessity to have B at all? No, there's not a necessity. We don't know. The report is not telling us if these families are active. That's one of the things I might add to this so that we can see that right here. And it's just the status field. Right, so we've got all these active families, and this is showing us the difference of these are foster placements that are active, so we're just not seeing discharge placements. Cool. Well, this was not the best example. We thought we had it like a great example, but this is not showing us. A lot of times these filter groups, you'll know, I guess, when you come up to a limitation with your filters in the general options of, let's see here. Do all of these things have to match, or do some of these things have to match, right? It's like, this is right. If we came up to a limitation where this is no longer going to work, that might be an opportunity to enable filter groups, which is here. Right. Oops, let me go jump back. Okay. All right, so this is report stats are going to give us statistical data from records. It'll summarize fields and hopefully help you see patterns. I use it a lot for empty values, or to see what programs are performing the highest, or have what social workers have the highest caseloads, things like that. You'll commonly use them for list values and dates that you can summarize into months or quarters or years. And then there are some aggregate options to see the percentages or the minimum maximum. So we'll kind of explore those here as well. So report stats are at the top of your report. You can show or hide them. You will choose what you want to see the report by. So placement location, this is generally going to be the foster family home. Of course, if you had a placement connected to an organization record, like a group home, it would show an organization record instead. And it shows the count of children that are in that particular home. I'm able to click and filter the report to that home, and here are the kids that are in that home. Okay, and we know that that's 9% of our total kids on this report are in this home. This also shows our age, because I've added the aggregates to that. So I'm going to show you how that is set up so that you can see that. So again, knowing your table and field structure, super important. Basic going backwards is understanding what a table and a field is. You can override this title. Sometimes it being called the location just isn't helpful. If the location, you don't have group homes or you're not connecting children to organization record, you could rename that here so it's easier to see. Then your basic stats are counting the number of records that exist for this category or percentages. And then I can also do choose from some of these aggregates. Sometimes these aren't going to make any sense to the data that you're working with, right? So you're not going to, as an example, like count up the total length of days for multiple placements and all your placements for all kids. Like it would be a number that's so big it just doesn't mean anything. But your minimum number of days, your maximum or average days at a location is going to make more sense. So when you are calculating, when you are like summing up the total length of days, right? We don't want to see everybody's, if you have 3 kids, they're all there for 5 days each. We don't want to see that number 15. That's not super helpful. I don't think, although I'm now like, maybe that is for billing, that could be something that could be useful in some instances, but so yeah, so it's going to vary wildly on what you are trying to, what's the purpose of your report? What are you trying to extract from the data? Here, my aggregate field, you only get one, right? So it's not like a pivot table in Excel, you get one option. So if you wanted to know the age and the length of days at this placement and I don't know, is there something else? Either way, those 2 things, you're going to have 2 separate report stats. But here you get to choose. Now, these are the tables that are pulled on this report. There's an opportunity for you to pull from other tables if you added those tables to the report. And then you'll choose the specific field. Sam is limiting to those fields that can be calculated, which is nice, right? So it's not giving you every date field that exists on a placement record or a list field because this is doing calculations. Then I get to make a selection of how am I ordering the report. I do it a lot by field counts to see what's happening the most at the top and set it descending. But sometimes that doesn't make sense. Sometimes it makes sense for it to be by field title, like when it's particular year or year and month, so that it's ordered that way. You might also choose one of the aggregate options. You can show report stats by default so that the report stats will always be opened up on your report. You could show totals at the bottom, and you can also limit the number of records. Like sometimes we see records, if we're looking at a kind of a year-over-year report and your agency's been using the system for a decade, you've got 10 records by default, and that can be really just lengthy on the taking up the real estate of the report. So you might limit it to trim that up some. The totals was here. So this is like 23 kids total, which is what we see here. Okay, 23 cases for these families. Right, so just kind of help you with verifying your numbers. Let's see, is there anything else that I want to talk about report stats? You can filter. I did show you that. I think that's it. So we've got a couple of folks on. I'm going to open it up to questions. If you've got questions, you're welcome to ask. Well, maybe we'll call it then. Reports are definitely, I think the thing that maybe I want to say about reports is they're really powerful. right? So what is really great is you're not stuck with, I can only pull certain data that your developer decided you were going to be able to see. So if you create new fields and new tables in the system, those tables and fields are going to be pullable in the reports immediately, exactly like everything that's been there from day one is. You've got tons of operators and things to choose from and how you interact with the report. And then filters can be confusing. As you can see, I can easily get where, when you see it one way and you're like, this is great. This is, I was on with Ryan right before this and like, this is a great example. And then when I look at it again, it's not a great example because it don't even need all of these filters here. So that's okay. What is important is, again, like kind of getting familiar with the data expectations, what you're expecting, right? Am I expecting 3 to 5 records, or am I expecting like thousands of records? It's right. So again, going back to knowing the purpose of your report, and then playing with it. If you have challenges, you are welcome to talk to us at any time, and talk to us at support@InReach Solutions, or clicking the support link at the top of your system. And with that, I will say thank you. Thank you for the folks who have joined today. We do have 2 more SAM talks this month. Next